I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Cole.
And today we're going to talk about a verse in Joshua, a couple verses in Joshua. But first, I want to give y'all a song that got me through a really hard, stressful time recently. And it's called Fear Is Not My Future by Maverick City Music, featuring Brandon. And it just talks about if it's not good, it's not finished. Don't worry. All good things work out for your good. And so when I was in my devotional today, we're in Joshua right now, and I was just reading it. I prayed beforehand, and I was reading it, and then I was praying afterwards. And the verse that I'm going to read is out of Joshua 21, and then it's chapter 21, verses 43 through 45. So it's headlighted, the Lord promise fulfilled. So the Lord gave Israel all the land he had sworn to give their fathers, and they took possession of it and settled there. The Lord gave them rest on every siding according to all he had sworn to their fathers. None of their enemies were able to stand against them, for the Lord handed over all their enemies to them. None of the good promises the Lord had made to the house of Israel failed. Everything was fulfilled. And beforehand, you see Moses free the Israelites out of Egypt, and then them wander through the wilderness for 40 years, and you see them complain and be like, "What? I don't want this. I'd rather go back to Egypt and be a slave." And Joshua and Caleb were like, "But we can take this land. I know God promised it to us. It's ours. We don't need to be looking at what our worldly eyes sees, but what our heavenly eyes see. We don't need to be living in the flesh. We need to be living in the spirit." And I was just wow, and then you read through Joshua, they were killing people. He had to trap people. He had to kill them. And, I'm sure that wasn't easy, to say, knowing that God promised you all of this promised land. And you're and I'm sure, a lot of times, as Christians, we're we know God has this promise for us. And we're yes, we know it's true. We know it's going to come to pass. But we have our own plans. And we just imagine, we're going to march in and it's going to go smooth sailing and there's never going to be a problem. And then it's but here's reality. And you bump this and you do this and you fail a couple times. And it's not always pretty.
I think that was the biggest problem for the Israelites while they was in the wilderness, though. Because, God came to Moses and was hey, this is what you got to do. You got to leave Pharaoh and take all your people into the wilderness. And then you'll cross and you'll get there to the promised land. And Moses was cool, I'll do it. And then all the Israelites were okay, we'll do it. And then they did it. And they struggled a little bit. And it was hard. God never said it was going to be easy. He said to do it in faith. And then they didn't do it in faith. And then they got lost for 40 years. So, God literally gave them food from the sky. And they said it tasted bad. I'm going to do a shout out to Superbook because I'm a very visual person. And Superbook does great on, it's a children's show. It's a cartoon and it does great on illustrating these biblical events. And one of them is that when they're in the wilderness and they're complaining about the manna. And Jacob and Caleb, they're
Joshua.
Joshua. I want to say Jacob. Joshua, because it rhymes. Joshua and Caleb are what are you doing? Have faith. He's literally sending us food from the heavens. He parted a sea a few minutes ago. Did you miss that part? Is that before or after Moses hits the rock and water comes out of it? Mm. These people seen all these crazy things, and they're nah, it's not good enough.
And I think they're it's not good enough because it's not what they envisioned. And I'm sure Joshua was not I'm going to have to kill all these kings. I'm going to have to slay these people. I'm going to have to do this.
If I was Joshua, I'd have been I would have never thought that. I'd have been okay, I seen the people, I seen the promised land, the grapes, the figs, and, there's a few big people, but God said we got it, so we got it. I would never have thought I would have had to kill 5 kings or give away my daughter for somebody killing another king. Or burn their bodies and then hang them from a tree for a day each. what? If I was Joshua, I'd have been like, oh, you said so I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
But I just, like, and like when I was talking to God about it and praying about it, and he was like, make a video about this, I was like, okay. And I just heard him like say over in my head, like, and repeatedly like tell my spirit, like, it's not always easy. It always doesn't look pretty. Like, it's going to be hard. You're going to want to quit halfway through. You're going to be like, this is not what I envisioned, like, for my life. Like, I did not want these struggles. I did not want these things. But the fact that Joshua, like, and I think that's one reason why I'm looking to Joshua, is like, because he prevailed. He got everything God promised. Because nobody else did. Joshua got to enter in. He got to enter into that kingdom, but nobody else in that world did. As like one of my shows says, Moses didn't make it past the bouncer. And I just love that quote. And it's funny, and it's like,
it's funny, but it's true. It's real.
God literally told him, this land is yours, but he didn't get to make it in. And that's crazy to me. And I'm like, man, if he had just stayed.
Moses got to see it.
Yeah.
But he couldn't touch it. He couldn't even set one foot into it.
And so my point, and like where God's telling us to go with this video is like, though it's not always easy, though it's not always pretty, though it doesn't always feel good, though you might be like lonely, or like you're like, I don't want this anymore, but keep on prevailing, because if God said it's going to come to pass, it comes to pass. Maybe not our time or like how we see fit, but with God, like, it always comes to pass, and he's always faithful. And that's like one thing, like, I've had to keep on like reminding myself is like how faithful I am to him. He's so much more faithful to me. Like,
that's what I was about to say. If we're faithful to him, he'll be faithful. But even if we're not faithful to him, he's still faithful to us.
Yeah.
He loves us. He loves us anyway.
Yeah, like he sent his son to die on the cross, even though we were all still sinners. And like,
he loved the Israelites so much that their parents didn't make it into, but their kids made it into the promised land.
Yeah.
Joshua and Joshua and Caleb were the only ones of that generation.
Yeah. And so my advice and like what I want to say in closing is like, hold steadfast. Like, even if it's not making sense, like, you're in good company. Promise we're going to touch more people in the Bible that it didn't make sense. And they were like, what? Because and like, that's one reason I told you to, gave this song, in the beginning, is because that song says, if it's not good, it's not finished. And I think as many times us as Christians, we need that reminder, like, God said it's going to be good, and he's faithful. And so what he says will come to pass. So yeah, that's all I have.
It's all right. You just made me think, saying that if it's not, what did you just say?
If it's not good, it's not finished.
If it's not good, it's not finished. You just got to remember, he also says he knows the plans for you. They're to prosper you and not to harm you. So if you feel like you're in danger, or like, stuff's not looking right, there's still work to be done.
And the verse he just quoted is in Jeremiah. And so I just think, like, hold steadfast, keep the faith, and
just keep swimming.
advice from Dory.